Okay, so the first question is, find the X and Y-intercept for this problem right here. If you're having trouble finding the X and Y-intercept, what you need to do is you need to think about what an X and Y-intercept means. And what an X-intercept means is that it means it's on the X line. And if a point is on the X line, you can see that it has no height or it has no Y value. So X-intercepts have a Y value of 0, or they don't have a Y value is another way to say it. If we look at the Y-intercept would have no left or right value because it's right on that line. So a Y-intercept would have no X value, or another way of saying that is an X value of 0. So this is where the idea of the cover-up method happens. Because if I'm looking for an X-intercept, that would mean that I have no Y value. So I just cancel out my Y value. And I can see, if I cancel out my Y value, that 3x is equal to 12, or x would be 4. So that would be my X-intercept. We could play the same game with the Y value. So we'll get our Y value back, which was a 2. And if we cancel out our X value, or cover it up, we can see that we have 2y equals 12, so divide each side by 2, and we would get y is equal to 6. So those would be my X-intercept, which is 4, and my Y-intercept is 6. Try the next problem. For this problem right here, if you got stuck again, what you want to do is you want to do the same thing. You know an X-intercept means that I have no Y value. So I cover up this Y value, which would end up giving me 2x is equal to 42, or x is equal to 21. I could do the same thing to find my Y-intercept. A Y-intercept means I have no x value, so I cover that up, and we can see that we would have 7y is equal to 42. Or another way of saying that is that y is equal to 6 when you divide both sides by 7. So that would be my X and Y-intercept. Let's try the next one. Again, if you got stuck with this one, what you want to do is for the X-intercept, we know that our Y value is 0. We don't have a Y value, so we'll get rid of our Y value. That means that we'd have 3x equals 36. If 3x equals 36, to find what x equals, I divide both sides by 3, so I'd get that x equals 12. And now we would do the same thing with our Y-intercept. So what a Y-intercept would mean is that x is equal to 0. So I'd cover this up. We would end up getting that 4y is equal to 36. Again, to get y by itself, I'd divide by 4, and I'd get y is equal to 9. And that would be my answer. Let's try another one. For this one, if you got stuck with it, I think the number one issue is probably going to be not finding the X-intercept. I think most people are going to realize that the X-intercept is 2. And again, you can find that by covering up this Y value. And you could see that 5x is equal to 10. So x would equal 2. The hard problem one was probably the Y-intercept. So we know the x is equal to 2. The Y-intercept, you want to cover up the x value, and when you cover up the x value, you're going to see that you have a negative y equals 10. Well, how do I get rid of a negative y? Well, it's really like I have a negative 1y equals 10. So I don't want that negative 1, so I divide each side by negative 1, and I would get that y is equal to negative 10. So my x-intercept would be 2, and my y-intercept would be negative 10. Let's try another one. When we look at this one, we would want to find the x and y-intercept. It's actually going to work a lot like the last one, where we would get x equals, and again, we'd cover up the y. So I'm going to cover up the y. I'm not going to cross it out as much as I normally do, so we can still see it. And we'd have 3x equals 24, which would give us 8. Now we'll find the y-intercept, which means I got to cover up the x. Again, we'll have negative 2y is equal to 24, so we'll have to divide both sides by negative 2, and we get negative 12. And those would be my two answers. Let's try another one. This is our last example, so if you're still stuck after this, please raise your hand and ask, because I won't be doing any more examples in the video, and you really need to know how to do this for the quiz. So again, what I need to know is I need to know my x-intercept, and I can find that by covering up this y value, because I know an x-intercept has no y value. And then we would divide this side by 5 and this side by 5, giving me that x is equal to 3. My y value, again, we'd now want to cover up the x, so I don't have an x. I'm going to have negative 3y is equal to 15. We divide each side by negative 3, and I'm going to get that y is equal to negative 5. And those would be my two answers. Let's talk about one last thing before I end this video. I want to think about why would this be hard to find the x and y intercepts. And the answer you should have came up with, why we had that pause, was that here I'd get some decimals. Watch, if I cover up the x and I divide each side by 2, I'd get that x is equal to 13 divided by 2 is not a nice number. You could do it, and you should get 6.5, but again, it's just not that nice of a number to work with. Same thing if we went the other way and we covered up the x and we divided the y over. So if you did 13 divided by 6, you're going to get 2.1 or 2.16 repeating. So again, this y number is not that nice. So the big things that we should notice with these things is if we're going to get decimals, we can still find the x and y intercepts. They're just not as nice of numbers. Try the different problems, and then after this video, watch the next one.